Friday. That was just so sweet.
That was, yeah, that was a really nice surprise. I didn't know when or how exactly we were going to go about things with everything going on. And then I asked Miss Christina here, who predicted Paul almost, 2 years maybe before he showed up, if she would do the ceremony. So she agreed to do that.
Terrified, I guess.
I'm terrified. First wedding, and yeah, thank you. It's very exciting. We were like, okay, June 19th, we're going to shoot for that. We're going to keep moving forward. And you know what? Forget about COVID. Forget about everything else. We'll just minimize, leave it at that. We're more comfortable with that anyways.
100%.
So nerve-wracking, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Very anxiety-inducing. So I just want to celebrate the fun parts.
Yeah.
Wow, that is beautiful.
Yes, it's the cats already causing trouble, so maybe they should go out, and the heater is running, so we can't have that either. Okay, so I am just waiting for a few people to tune in here. If you guys on TikTok could please let Paul know if you can
on YouTube
see us and hear us okay, that would be helpful. Thank you on YouTube for the heads up that you can see and hear us all right. Okay, I do want to invite you guys, if you aren't already following me here on TikTok or following, if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, feel free to do so. If you hit the bell, that bell will alert you when I go live to do shows, classes, or we have church. So feel free to do that also. Now, the way we run our Sunday services here, we encourage interaction. So if you guys have questions or comments on the sermon today, on what me, the other reverends are speaking about, feel free to post those in the comment section. Paul will be taking them throughout, and if they don't really fit in with what we're talking about, we will take them at the end. We'll be stopping at about the halfway mark to do a prayer and healing session. So if you guys have specific areas of your life that you need healing on, if you have a problem you want us to pray over you for, or if you know someone, another situation, okay, that calls for it, please feel free to start posting those now. But again, we will take a break about halfway through and give you guys extra time to do that. I do want to welcome everyone. I am Pastor Ivy Rivera. This is Roots Revival Interfaith. I am here with Reverend Christina Del Rey, our astrologer, Reverend Danny Johnson, our numerologist, and Reverend Paul Casey, Healing Arts. So we want to talk today about the third part of a series we've been doing. If you missed the previous two parts, you can see them on YouTube if you go to the playlist under Roots Revival Interfaith or anywhere that podcasts run. Now, the series has been Faith Versus. So the first one we did was Faith versus Fear and Worry. The second week, last week, we did Faith versus, emotion, feelings, when you let your feelings override your faith. And this week, the most powerful one, the most difficult one of all, we are talking about faith versus logic. How do you get past that overthinking, that patterned cyclical running of your mind that causes you to lose out on prosperity and truth in your life? All right, so welcome everyone. So glad to have you guys here, my pastors. How's everybody doing?
Good. Do you want that bigger?
No, this is fine. Okay, very good. I explained to everybody that they could start posting their questions and comments, prayer requests, as well as healing requests. Okay, very good. All right, so before I get started, I want to do a quick prayer. So if you guys want to get comfortable, close your eyes. If that helps you to get centered. Holy Spirit, we thank you for being with us today. We thank you for being with us every day and always. Thank you for always watching over us, for guiding us in truth and wisdom. Help everyone tuned in here today and everyone who watches this later to become closer to you, to tap into more of their faith and less of their logic, to know that they can trust the guidance that you're giving so that they can fulfill their life path and have the abundance that they're meant to have. I also ask that everyone who's lost, feeling despair, feeling alone, that this message finds them at just the right time. Amen. So let's get started here talking about part 3 of our series, Faith versus. Today we're talking about logic, faith versus logic. Now, the reason I said this one is the hardest to overcome is because after years of working on it myself, helping my children, helping clients, helping students, I see such a pattern here that is undeniable, that without a doubt, our ability to think, to be smart, can really work against us. It's an unfortunate human circumstance that what we know we should do, what we're told by society we should do to think, okay, to be logical, can actually really cost us everything if we're not careful in how we use it. So our thought process, logic, is a wonderful tool. Being intelligent is a great tool. There are many different kinds of intelligence, but I do find that there are certain people who really struggle with this more than others. Now, when we talk about Christina, or Reverend Christina here, our astrologer, may speak more on that, but when we talk about certain zodiac signs, for example, okay, if we're talking about Geminis, we're talking about Virgos, we're talking about people that are ruled by Mercury, ruled by the brain, ruled by thought. People like that, or if you have it somewhere in your chart, you may have a more difficult time with this than others. I think that when we did last week's sermon on faith versus emotion, we were really talking about people that are maybe water signs, you know, or like even fire signs, people who give into their feelings more. But this is something that I find everyone is susceptible to. So we also have more people with this problem because society backs it. So we know that we are supposed to think before we act. We know that we shouldn't just necessarily make decisions in our life based on the way that we feel. Your heart tells you to maybe go back to your ex, but you logically know better. Okay, and everyone around you will support the logical aspect of it. Well, it makes it harder when your intuition, when your faith is telling you to do something else. So we sort of worship logic more than we even do emotion. Another part of the problem, why I think people have a harder time going with their faith, going with their intuition, is because logic is closer to intuition than emotion is. So you can have a feeling, you can want something, and you know intuitively that the truth of what you should do is a million miles away from that. But when we're talking about your logic, it is frequently in alignment with your intuition. So what you should be doing, going by your gut instinct, going by faith, we get into a habit of thinking it should match, okay, what our comprehension says. And when that doesn't happen, just because of habit, we go with what has been safe, or so we think in the past, and that's okay. Just forget it. I will go with my logic. Now, this really deteriorates the process of trusting your gut instinct. I see increasingly every year since I started working with the public that there are more and more and more people who are just out at sea, who are just lost souls, who are in the wrong relationship, they're in the wrong job, they're having health problems. Things in their life are so out of whack because they have gotten into a habit of listening to their logic instead of their intuition. So we start to second guess ourselves. You think something intuitively, and then you become double-minded. It's almost like your brain kicks in and it just eats it. It just steals it from you. So we have to be in control of our minds at all times, just as we need to be with our emotion. But that is confusing, okay? The fact that they do line up a lot. I think the best way to look at it is, that's something to celebrate. I think it's a wonderful thing that most of the time when your gut instinct tells you to do something, it will match your logic. Probably not your emotion, but yes, your logic, okay? You just can't count on it all the time. I think another reason people struggle to go with their faith and their intuition instead of their logic is because logic is known to be helpful. It's helped you to pay your bills. It's how you get a job, you get a paycheck. It's how you have learned to navigate through life. It's how you've learned to handle your relationships. It's also backed by science. It's backed by facts. And what a lot of people do is they say, well, if there is scientific proof of something, or if I could say that something is a fact, forget intuition. Intuition is like a joke compared to that. And that is very dangerous thinking because, again, sometimes it will align and other times it won't. Another big part of the problem, I think, is that logic is backed by trauma. I find that a lot of my clients or my students who overthink, or even myself, when there's a really toxic habit of overthinking, talking oneself out of what was a good intuitive move in life, it's coming from a place of trauma. So we can build up these protective instincts and habits to make sure that we never have to go back to what happened to us in the past. And only to a degree is that really useful. And when I'm talking about trauma, I'm also talking about generational trauma. So ancestral healing. We just did a free mini class on that a few weeks ago. Breaking generational curses, it was called. You could see it here on the playlist in YouTube. Okay, is there such a thing as generational curses? Well, not in the hokey sense, but most certainly in the sense of psychological damage, trauma response, and bad habit forming, overthinking, right? Stress. We tend to inherit down through our family lines whatever trauma they have taken on. So, for example, if you had, grandparents or parents that lived through the Great Depression, well, a lot of those people hoard and they're very anxious. And there's a constant sense of having to sacrifice. So workaholism, negative tendencies to treat money like it is so glorified, that almighty buck, right? Is that security. You have to have that. So you must work your entire life, even if you don't like your job, stay there, retire, get that college degree, go into debt for it, like whatever you need to do. That is a toxic mentality, not at all based on truth. So a lot of people, especially younger generations, are realizing this is not the way. And that's a wonderful thing. We can learn from the younger people who aren't experiencing as much of that generational trauma as some of us are. But I do find that older people, middle-aged and up, there is a terrible tendency to negate what we feel intuitively we should do. okay, because of those standards and because of that trauma. So let's talk about a couple helpful tips here. And then I want to break this down a little bit more before we let the other reverends sort of open up, to some discussion. It is really important. This will help you to feel more comfortable, that you understand divine timing. We have a free mini class up here on YouTube called Divine Timing, When to Make a Move. I find that most people don't do what they should because they're not sure that they're supposed to when they feel that they are. They wait. They think they're waiting on something else. I don't know if maybe they're waiting on God to come down and say, like, now is the time. But, when you feel it in your gut, that's probably just about the time, or you should at least get ready to make a move. But people don't do that. And a lot of people think they have more time than what they have. And that is really sad to watch. I see so many say, well, I still have time, or I'm young, or I could do it later, or I'm going to wait until I feel ready. And often that day never comes. And then the opportunity is passed by. Deadlines are a real thing. You need to understand timing. It will back you when you get ready to follow that faith and step out. Okay, I would also check out the free mini class we have called The Still Small Voice. That will help you to decipher whether it's your intuition talking or it's your logic and emotion. All right, so how do you know, though? Let's break down a couple things here. Well, how do you know when it's your faith calling you, when it's your intuition calling you? First of all, it's relentless. It does not stop. Your gut instinct will not go away. And every time you try to replace it with your logic, okay, that gut instinct interjects and it leaves you without a sense of peace. It causes this inner turmoil. You don't feel at rest with your decision. All right, so that's number one. Number two, it'll show up in your dreams. When you're ignoring your intuition, what you're supposed to be doing, your guides, your ancestors will come and pay you visits while you're sleeping. They will give you direction. Sometimes you'll hear your name called when the veil is lifted, when you're dozing off and when you're waking up. You may really hear very audibly your name being shouted, or see your spirit guides up in your face, see your ancestors up in your face. They're letting you know there's something that you're overlooking or that you're going the wrong way. And we also see subconscious dreaming. I'm not necessarily nightmares, but definitely you are processing a lot when you're dreaming. Okay, so it could be nightmares. It could also be like you're working or you're overworking. Your dreams take on a lot of symbology. And you need to do some dream analysis. What are your dreams telling you? Okay, subconsciously, you're going in the wrong direction. You should also watch for symbology when you're awake. Things like totem animals following you. When we see things like hawks or eagles, we want to make sure they're moving from the left to the right. That's from the past into the future. If you see everything going backward, animals going backward from the right to the left, that's a sign that you're going in the wrong direction. Pay attention. Let's talk about number 3. You're restless. You're irritable. You have anxiety. You have depression. You have a terrible sense of foreboding. You don't know why. You don't feel good in your life. It could be that there's something you've been ignoring that you were supposed to do. Number 4, you have a tendency to search outward, going to everyone else. What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? Okay, if you go get a reading, maybe you're going to see your psychic medium and you're constantly asking the same question over and over and over again. Or you see a bunch of psychics, you get a bunch of tarot reads, they all tell you the same thing, but you don't want to listen. Okay, and you think that in time it will just feel right. It's okay. I'm at peace with my decision. So you lie to yourself. You say, I'm at peace with my decision. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is the smart thing to do. And in time, my feelings will just catch up with it and I'll feel okay. It doesn't work that way. Intuition never backs down. Your gut never lies. Energy always tells the truth. Okay, so it's sort of a haunting experience. So what do we need to remember about this? Okay, victory is going to come from you habitually doing what you are called to do and putting your logic aside when you need to. The only way to get into a rhythm of this and to allow for it to be easier eventually is to do it all the time. Divine timing, again, will help with that. It's usually not a bomb that gets dropped on you. So when people act like their intuition is kicking in and they're just like shocked by it, I always wonder if they've been really blocking out their gut instinct for a long time, or if they're not being really truthful about the vision that they're having about their life, the faith that they should have by now, because Spirit is a gentleman, and we don't really see bombs being dropped on us like that. We know ahead of time that something is coming. And just because you've been denying it all along, right, doesn't mean it went anywhere. It's still part of something bigger. So you should have an inkling that you were supposed to be making these changes. You should have an understanding that it's part of a much bigger plan for your life. And that should help you to comprehend what exactly is going on. It really shouldn't be all that shocking. One of the tricks that I use, if it is a huge thing that is going to create a ton of change in my life, I say to Spirit, okay, this is a big deal. Show me 3 times and I will do it. 3 times. I don't do that for everything. Okay, but if it's going to affect my family, if it's going to affect my finances in a huge way, if it's going to affect this movement in a big way, show me 3 times. And once I hear it 3 times, I stop myself and I never ask again. I turn off my emotion, I turn off my logic, and I move. And I don't look back. You have to do it like a Band-Aid. You just tear it off, okay? There is no other way. Now, when you do it that way, too, I find that things move faster. When I hem and haw and I sort of procrastinate, it just costs me things. And it definitely makes the transition a lot longer, more uncomfortable than it ever had to be. A couple other helpful tips here. Look to your planets. Look to your numbers, okay? Reverend Christina, our astrologer, Reverend Danny, our numerologist, will probably be speaking more on this today. If you were to get a reading about your life contract, psychic mediumship reading, if you were to go get your astrology chart done, if you were to go get your numerology done, you would know where major change is going to come up in your life. This is destiny charted. It's fairly predictable. So if we were a little bit more in tune there and less caught up on this hamster wheel up here, all right, the transitions would be a lot nicer. You should also be talking to your ancestors, your guides, God, your higher mind, your angels. If you are stuck, you are terrified to move forward in blind faith, or you're not sure what the heck you're hearing in your life, you need to sit for 10 minutes and call them in to show you what it is that's supposed to happen. You need to write it down in a journal and you need to move on with your life. Don't start becoming overly logical or emotional, talking to everybody about it. Keep it to yourself and move. Make that first step, and quickly afterward, your prosperity will kick in, right? It's just good karma. It's like you reap what you sow. One step forward in blind faith, and immediately the universe around you will give you recognition that you are going the right way. But until you do that, you get nothing. Okay, you have to take that step. All right, so I want to open this up to you guys. Questions, comments?
So when you spoke about logic and intuition and faith, it's interesting because like intuitive wisdom, I know that we've spoken about intuitive wisdom here and with revival and especially in mediumship and our mediumship courses. But the thing is, like, intuitive wisdom doesn't make sense. Like, it gives us peace, it gives us understanding, it allows for us to have a sense of resolve, but it doesn't make sense. So it's important to be careful in having faith in knowing that once we have that resolve, it's no coincidence that we have a response. We know what is going on. We know that we're held, and even though it doesn't make sense logically, so then we have to like, what I do sometimes is go back and think about it and dissect it. And by the time you dissect it, it's like you have a delicious meal that now is just like compartmentalized, and now it's like little crumbles of something that would have been really delicious, and it's just, we can't ruin it in that way. And what's interesting about logic too is, especially for many of us who are called to do light work, who are healers, where it's in our life contract, the more God and the universe, and especially our ancestors and our guides, they can be really hilarious because they'll allow us to dig ourselves really deep into logic. And then once we're really knee deep into that logic, there's somebody who redirects us to our intuition. And that has happened to me. That actually, one of my ancestors, not biologically, but someone who I love dearly, who I met in a very logical space, in a very logical institutional kind of like educational space. And once he crossed over, he was the one that led me to you. And he didn't stop until I signed up, and you've connected with him too. So it's inescapable. It really is. And when we think also, and in terms of numbers, I appreciate you lifting up a thing with the numbers as well. So I know we've spoken before that different numbers carry different, different aspects of energy. And so for those of us whose life path or expression number or heart's desire numbers are potentially either 1 or 4, like 1 being very kind of like leadership oriented and taking the bull by the horn, being the trailblazer, like trying to create a certain type of change, and then 4 being logical and practical. Those, knowing that those could potentially be our life path, heart's desire, or expression numbers, it empowers us to know that when it's time for us to use our intuition and to be in an intuitive space, that we could get in our own way. I'm a life path number 1. And I know that there are times when I get into my own way and I start to think and overthink, and I help no one. And at a point, the ancestors just say, just shut up, please. Just you stop helping. Like, just stop helping, please. And when we think about even some of the mathematicians and the scientists whose work is often highly respected, they themselves were intuitive. They themselves believed in spirit. Like, we think about Einstein, who was a mathematician and physicist, and he was deeply spiritual, so deeply connected spiritually and religiously. And Aristotle, who was a physicist and who was a philosopher, he even went to jail. He allowed himself to be imprisoned to stand by his own religious faith beliefs. So it's all connected. And the more that we try to justify staying in a logical space, all it's going to do is just redirect us to where we're supposed to be. And they'll laugh at us when they do it too.
Yeah. It's funny, what we want to talk about in society and what we want to remember, people for historically. We want to praise them for certain things, and then other things have been, cut out. And it is so true that our wisest leaders, our most impactful people, anywhere at any time, they were connected to spirit. They were connected to universe. They knew that there was a law, that there was an order to things. And I did some research recently on some of the most successful, like the richest people in the world. And one common thing they all said was that they know when to turn their logic off and go with their gut instinct. And that was the smartest move they ever learned. That was the most brilliant trick they ever learned, because everything around them said, oh, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you what you already built, you know? And you just have to, it's sort of like being an artist too. You know, it's just being in the flow. We can't just be so rigid all the time. You know, there isn't an artist, a musician out there, a reader, a healer, who doesn't know that when you get in the flow of things, all the answers and the prosperity and the beauty comes from that, you know?
And what's interesting is, so Paul being a life path number 8, number 8 life path folks are folks who have a really incredible balance of the practical and the intuitive. So being able to be connected to the intuitive and then being connected to spirit, and then being able to kind of translate it and kind of like allow for the vision that was created in spirit to be actualized in a logical, practical way. And so, so Paul, you hit the jackpot.
I love that. That sums you up. Yep.
Oh yeah, and when we had talked in Danny's numerology class, I was born a couple weeks early, so you know, it's like my numbers would have been completely different. My astrology would have been completely different. You know, everything would have been different. So yeah, that's totally cool.
Christina, were you saying something?
So Mercury rules thoughts. And, you know, like Ivy said, there are people who have very strong Mercuries, particularly air signs, you know, Aquarius, Gemini, Libra. Or if your Mercury is in an air sign, the mind tends to just keep going. And, you know, Mercury is in retrograde right now. On Saturday next week, it will go direct. And I do expect that to be powerful. I expect that to be like a little bit of an awakening, because right now we are reviewing our thoughts, how we're thinking individually and as a society. But, you know, and what equality means, and what freedom means, we're thinking all these things. So when it goes forward, usually, you know, that kind of makes things come to light. But we really, as a society, we value that logic so much. I mean, if you think about it in school, if you know, the teachers praise the person who answers the fastest, right? You know, they're like, you know, you're encouraged. Oh, you're so smart. You know what I mean? And everybody wants to be that smart person. But nobody really ever has time to process their thoughts, or, you know, like, it's just, we live in a society that values that. And it's very, you know, because there are all kinds of intelligences, that is very damaging to some people. And then people think that they can't think right, and negative thinking comes from that, and low self-esteem. And so the mind really is just an addiction. We are addicted to our thoughts simply because we think we are our mind. And we are not our mind. We are a spiritual being. So the mind works like the rest of our cells and organs work. It has a purpose, right? But we over-identify with it. And we think that we are our thoughts, or we think that, you know, and if somebody tries to challenge our thoughts, we get really upset because that's who we are, you know, but you're not that, though, because you're a spiritual person. So the only way that you can really understand this, and you know, like the whole trust thing, like that is my lesson to learn. You know, everything you said, that is all my lesson to learn. That's where I'm at in my spiritual development. But what I am learning right now is that the only way to realize, you know, how to control the thoughts is to get into silence and stop the thought process. Even if you can do it for like 20 seconds or 5 seconds, or, you know what I mean? And the more you practice, the better it gets. But it's very powerful. And, you know, people start to overthink. And then they start to come from fear, anxiety. That if you are fearful or you have anxiety, you are not coming from your higher self. You're coming from ego. So, the divine timing. Also, too, I wanted to mention, because you were talking about divine timing, cycles in astrology happen. So, like, for instance, right now, you're in a cycle, finally out of a not so great cycle and into a better cycle. But if you didn't know this, okay, this is the time, you know what I mean? Like, astrology aligns with this. Some people will be like, oh, things are going great. They're just going to keep going great. Well, no, things aren't going to ever keep going great, because we're always going to be challenged. But things will go great for a little while. So you have to harness that energy, And really the only way to know that is just to get quiet. Astrology is a great tool, but if you're not in touch with that intuition, that quiet voice, then, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you're not going to know which way to go. And when and you talked about the conflicting mind too, when you're thinking one thing and then you're thinking another and everything's conflicting, you're sending conflicting messages to the universe too. So the universe can bring you what you want. So that is also a problem.
I just want to say that that is such a big deal, is that we think that manifestation, is being able to, like, repeat a feeling or a desire, and we don't really understand that if we're not living and abiding within the law, which is being willing to move forward in blind faith, you're negating it. You're negating it. People don't seem to understand how law of attraction and manifestation actually works. It's not enough. It's not enough to think it, to claim it. We also need to understand that when there's something you really want, and you know that you're deserving of it, it's part of your calling, let that be enough. That's you. That's your responsibility. That's your part. That's awesome. Now let the universe do its work. Because if you expect something so specific to come along, or that it's going to play out in one specific way, you tend to miss all the other steps and zigzags and layers that go along with it. We tend to think of life as being like a direct line. It's from A to B, and that's where I'm going. And it's not. It's like zigs and zags and circles. And sometimes, you get a level up, and then you wait 3 years and you go and you do something else, and then we continue with that. We can't decide how it's going to look.
Yeah, I'm learning that one the hard way. And I'm also learning that, the trusting part is the part kind of, that I'm struggling with. But I'm learning that when you just trust, it has to happen its own way, but you're trusting it. And then if you're trying to force something to happen in a certain way, that's when things can go really south. Because we're looking for, like you mentioned this, we're looking for security as a collective. We're always looking for security. That's what our parents told us. You know what I mean? That's what the media tells us. But we're sacrificing trust for security. And, so like, okay, well, like I have this attachment. I can't leave this one thing I have, or I'm attached to this. And if you're so attached, then you are not able to create and, and hear your inner voice.
Which is still fear and ego. It's still fear and ego. And this is what our parents and our grandparents, have left out. They don't.
I think because they were in a situation that,
But then what does that do? What does that do? It tells us that we should feel guilty, that we're being irresponsible, that we're bad people if we follow our intuition. Right. And you get it just slapped right out of you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because you're for security.
Of course.
Yeah. So that's like a mental disease that we have to break.
It really is. Amen to that. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to I thought some of these were really, fabulous things that I was thinking too. Like, though, I love that it brought up science. Because I was like, all right, logic, I can think of science. But the way it went from, what Danny was saying, that all these guys were, the scientists were faith-based, and then it kind of transitioned to, logic and science being at the forefront and faith in the back seat. But now when we get smaller and smaller and smaller, like, everything kind of disappears, and, they're basing all their laws and everything on the fact and faith that these things work and that they're true. Like, how many different models of the universe do they have now? And everyone's just saying, because they can't see it, they can't prove it, and they're just saying, well, yeah, I believe in this one. Mm-hmm. And, but it's under the guise of science, when it's really just them having faith, and like with Christina saying that we're, the mind is kind of like, we're not our minds. And like, that's brilliant, because, it's like, you can't tell where anything is in an atom, but it's in this framework. Right. So it's like faith and spirit are all the same, and just like this other framework, and that's your mind, it's your body's this framework, and it all translates, but it's just that people start putting it under different monikers, and it's like, but it's all based on faith. And like, I was thinking when this topic came up that like electron probability, it's like the wave, and so it's everywhere in the atom at once. That has a percentage to be everywhere in the atom at once. Well, more likely in certain places till you look and find it, right? But at one point, everyone believes it's everywhere in the atom, but it can't be, and they just have faith that this is right, and that they just continue to do it. And I don't know, it's mind-blowing that they don't see it as just faith, but they're continuing to do that.
Well, how many great, scientific discoveries did we get to eventually? Could you turn the heater on?
Yeah.
Based on theories. Well, these were just theories, at one time. I mean, everything's based on faith. Every major accomplishment required some level of faith. How we got so far out at sea today in our society, it's silly. It's really quite ridiculous. Like, we have to get back in touch with our roots, because we've stopped being productive. We're stunted in our growth. We're stunted in our communication and our sense of community to one another. We're stunted in our sense of identification and purpose as individuals. We're stunted in our wealth. We're stunted in our health. We're stunted when we look at the environment. We have stalled because of this. We have got to get past this. I just wanted to say too, and then I know you guys probably have more to say on this, but when Christina mentioned fast thinking and teachers being like, good, you're fast, you're smart, you're a winner, and all of that encouragement, and how those of us who were the last one at the blackboard trying to solve the math problem, and how things like that mess with your self-esteem and stunt you permanently, it's probably those kids who don't do so well that turn to faith more easily. So there are wins, but the idea that we move so quickly because it's reinforced, but also look at how many extracurriculars. And I was guilty as a mom to an extent, when my kids were small, so many extracurriculars, it was hard to make time to make sure they were able to sit still to process things. Well, we have so much more technology available to us too. So in the times when we normally would have stopped moving, or our children would have stopped moving, we turn to phones and games and computers and social media. That is not quiet time to process. There is no quiet time to process unless we make it a priority. And what I thought was really interesting about what she said was that you have to be the observer of your thoughts. You are not the way you think. You are not your thoughts. You are not your logic. You are the observer of your experience. You are the observer of your thoughts. You are the observer of your emotions. Pull back and watch yourself. And that's where the answers are.
I also wanted to say too that there's certain transits that we have. So our Mercury is a personal planet. And if we have a tough transit to our Mercury, your thoughts can become unhealthy. So, like if you have a Pluto transit or something like that, and if you are observing your thoughts and you know that they are unhealthy, like that is half the battle. It's not that it's not going to be hard, but it'll be slightly easier because you'll at least know, okay, these thoughts I'm having, they're obsessive. They're not healthy. Maybe I need to go do some shadow work. Maybe I need to go to, a psychologist. You know what I mean? Like at least you are observing the fact that the thoughts are not healthy. Because if you are so in your mind that you're trusting thoughts that are not healthy,
right,
you're going down the road of mental illness.
It's true. Yes.
So you have to be really careful. And if you're a person who's not aware spiritually, you can really get sucked into that. And it's really hard to come back.
I'm about to do a series on like TikTok and YouTube on conspiracy theories and Q and cults, and how we're losing our parents, we're losing our family members, we're losing our friends to things like that right now, and how it is essentially that it is an unwillingness to like challenge that thinking or to let go. We get so stubborn. This is right. This is what it is. And we don't question enough. We don't, and when Danny earlier, when you said, well, following our intuition will give us peace. But for most circumstances, it's sort of like nothing else, though. It's just like, it could look like complete chaos. And that's so true because often we get rejected by others. The people we hope will support us in our life the most. We could see rejection come from all areas. There are consequences to following your faith. It doesn't make it wrong. And I just wanted to say off of that, yes, it gives us peace. And honestly, that is the only thing that will bring us peace, is if we learn to follow that faith. That's where it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Paul, were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna throw in really quickly observation. Again, back to quantum physics here. It's like you observe a reaction and then you change it. Okay, like just the mere fact of observing it alters the whole course of everything. So like to say, if you can see it, then you can change it. Yeah, and that's like the first step. And it's even back down to science, which is, again, kind of weaving this faith in together with it. That even the actions you would do in the scientific process are the same as you would do in life and faith. And just to say, to try and separate them is, it becomes harder and harder to do the more we learn,
And additionally, when you were speaking about like intuition giving us that sense of peace, like intuition being the only thing that gives us peace, and you were describing how sometimes it might feel chaotic in those moments when we know that this is the answer. We know what we have. We know that we are given what we need. Sometimes when in the midst of in that intuitive space and not having control because we're not supposed to, like when Christina before was describing that sense of security, when we have no control, logic is in those moments help us to feel powerful. And it's like this sense of like, like I've got something concrete in my hand, which is
right.
It's like a brick made of. The thing will crumble in your hand and you'll just be sad and dirty. And it's just really unfortunate. But it's in those moments when logic, though at moments it can be very helpful. It's kind of like spice. It's just, it enhances things. It enhances us when we're in those spiritual moments, when we, might need something tangible at a particular moment. Us being spiritual beings, as Christina was saying, us being spiritual beings who are here on earth, there are certain practical things that we have to have in hand, but not all of the time. And logic just by itself can be very misleading. It can be a trickster. it can make us feel as though we've got so much figured out, and then all of a sudden we're just, that kid's
dissolved like a bath bomb.
Just like in a sled going downhill.
Real quick. Yeah, it does. And last week we talked about understanding that we're not here saying don't use your logic, just leap. That's not it. And last week when we were talking about emotion, we weren't saying that your emotions are never of use. But you have to understand there is a third element here, and this one trumps all. And if your feelings or your logic don't match this one, your faith, your intuition, your gut, then you got to go back to the drawing board. You have to release it and accept it for what it is. So funny. I know we want to open up to prayer requests. Okay, so I just want to say to everybody right now, if you have a healing or a prayer request that you haven't already posted, feel free to do that now. If you would like to leave a donation here for Roots Revival Interfaith, our church, feel free to do that. It's greatly appreciated. Of course, we're going to be getting to these in just a minute, but I know we have questions and comments coming in, so we'll get to those also. What do we have, Polly?
People are saying, we had one here on TikTok that girl was, Mary was just talking about this with her parents today.
Okay.
Said that this is perfect timing about this topic here. And, Mary says, a different Mary, said the Spirit has told her things about her family members. However, now say this often, it's not my lesson to learn, and I stay out of it. And she was awoken to stay in your lane and had to go rewatch it today. So. Oh,
good. Yeah. So stay in your lane she's referring to is one of the mini classes that I put up here on YouTube. Stay in your lane is about understanding what it is that you're called to do while you're here on earth. Not crossing boundaries, not enabling others, not being a wounded healer, understanding this is mine to do, and that's all I really need to focus on. Everything else will fall into place because the universe is supporting me when I am staying in my lane. I like that she referred to her family and said, look, I had to sort of throw my hands up, where my family is concerned, and had to go back and rewatch that class, Stay in Your Lane. Because that's a real problematic area when it comes to your kids, when it comes to your parents, when it comes to a spouse, or a lot of people, especially the workaholics or the perfectionists, when it comes to your job, you have to detach from that. There isn't a human being on earth that you came with an identical contract to. So forget it. It doesn't matter who they are. You still need to stay in your lane.
Yeah. And that kind of wraps up all this whole faith series here,
Yeah.
It's like, you do these things because of emotion, you do them because of fear, and logic, logically I should be doing this for someone else, but it's not part of what you're supposed to do. So, I think that's great timing on that. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, there's so much in regards to others that doesn't get looked at enough. How often are we sucked back in to bad habits to appease others, or because we've been brainwashed, we've been trained, we've been programmed into thinking that we're obligated to do so. And we don't want to face that guilt. We don't want to confront that. And so we just do what we think we're supposed to do. And that's really being challenged these days. I saw that more in 2020 than ever, and that's going to continue for a while. So we all need to be mindful that that is a gateway. We have another mini class up here on YouTube called Fighting the Dark, where I talk about the 5 different ways that you could feel like you're getting blocked or attacked. Every time you're about to move up a new level, there's a new devil, there's a new challenge. And most often we see that come from your inner circle. And so we do need to be mindful of these things. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you guys want to say anything else about this in summation before we get into the prayer requests?
I did just want to say that, one of my many jobs is a high school teacher. And there is something very beautiful about being able to move with logic and intuition at the same time, because I am able to intuitively meet my students' needs and yet logically help them with things. So when it blends, it's a beautiful thing and you become more effective. But it's a process to get there.
Amen. I like that word, effective. So many of us, so many of you tuning in, or so many of you are going to, see this later on, listen to it on the podcast. You're going to say, is that why I'm not very effective in my life? Is that where is my prosperity? I'm telling you, it's always this. It always comes down to this. All right. Are we ready to get into the prayer and healing requests? And are you leading this, Paul?
Sure.
Because you could see?
Yep, I have them.
Okay, very good.
Okay. All right. So we have one from Jeannie, who needs a prayer and some guidance for her career. So if we can just lift this up for Jeannie, that she can, find the guidance here with faith, with logic here, decide which she needs to follow and when, and figure it out. Figure out her career, what she should do, where she should go, how she should proceed. I think if we can lift that up, Jeannie, and claim that for Jeannie, get the guidance she needs from within and from her guides and ancestors to figure this out. Let's pray for Jeannie. This is one for Crystal. Crystal's praying for strength tomorrow as she faces a trauma trigger head on. So let's pray for Crystal to have her self-guarded and protected and very aware of what's going on so that she can make it through this trial and come out stronger, knowing that she has beaten this trigger and continue on her healing journey. So let's lift this up for Crystal. Let's claim this healing and strength for Crystal tomorrow to move forward in strength. I have one from Jill, who's looking for prayers for her father. He's going in for spinal surgery tomorrow. He's having 3 discs in his neck replaced. Please guide the surgeon's hands. Yes, let's lift this up. Jill, for her father, for her family, for all the doctors, all the nurses, all the staff, that everyone is on top of it, that they're trusting, they're guided, and they're using their knowledge, their intuition, their faith, and their logic any way they need to perform the surgery and get Jill's dad up and running again. Let's put that up here. Let's claim that safety, healing, knowledge, and power for Jill's father, family, and all the staff involved. Let's claim that. And this one came in for Ree. He's in a brutal custody battle. Let's pray for truth to prevail. So that's tough. That's very tough. Let's all lift that up for Ree to make sure that the truth comes up. The truth is exposed. Justice will prevail. And this custody battle goes quickly and easily and with little collateral damage here. Let's just pray that it's safe for everyone involved and quick. So let's lift that up and claim that for Ree. Okay, and this one is from Sarah, who lost her daughter 7 years ago. She's just looking for prayers and healing. So let's send Sarah some of our love and healing to help her ease her mind through unanswered questions. And let her know that her daughter is with her and loves her and is healing her all the time. Let's lift that up and claim this healing for Sarah.
I just want to add in one more. I want to pray over everyone who's ready to take this leap in blind faith. At this point in their life, if they are ready to do this, I ask for protection over them, because this is bold, this is powerful. When people learn to do this, they don't just change their own life, they change the world around them. So please protect them, Spirit. Keep them on path and help them to see the truth and the wisdom in being able to make decisions from their intuition. Help them learn quickly that they can trust themselves. Did you guys want to add anything else this week?
I'd like to add a couple more, please. For anyone who is afraid and trying to unsure where resources are going to come from and want to go about things the right way, want to go about things the honorable way, but are really concerned about how those resources are going to come in, I pray for abundance for them. I pray that every one of their needs are met and that they are given comfort and reminded that they are supported and held by God, the universe, and our ancestors and guides. Also like to lift up anyone with family members who are in the hospital who might be unable to visit their loved ones, who are unable to comfort them, love them, touch them, hug them. We pray for their comfort and pray for their reassurance that although they might not be able to visit them physically, that they are in the best of care and are looked over and cared for by God's Spirit and everyone in contact with them. Pray for and claim their healing and their comfort.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you so much, Reverends, for being here this week. Look forward to seeing you guys again next week. If you have missed previous services, you can go on the playlist under Roots Revival here on YouTube or anywhere that there are podcasts. So we will be moving into more series on karma and shadow work coming up here. So we hope to have you with us and follow for our midweek prayer service. We do a very brief healing and prayer service every week, Wednesday or Thursday night typically. And so if you need any additional prayer healing or you know someone who does, okay, follow for that. We hope to see you there as well. Thank you so much. See you guys next week.
Thank you. See you next week.